thinking back to my first company and even at the start of PDL, was still a little not timid, but maybe a little bit too calculated. A little. Sometimes you just need to go with your gut, and that will usually work out. And sometimes you're wrong. Just try again.
Welcome to Partner Path, a podcast that unpacks the venture capital and growth equity ecosystem from a junior perspective. Young entrepreneurs and investors have already had a massive impact on the industry, having started unicorns and launched billion-dollar funds. We discuss these success stories and more by sharing perspectives and advice from some of the industry's most prominent role models. This podcast expresses our views as of the date published and does not represent the views of and is not endorsed by any company for which we work.
Joining us today is Sean Thorne, co-founder at People Data Labs. Sean started at the University of Oregon in 2010 before dropping out in 2012 to start his first company, Hallspot. After pivoting from Hallspot, Sean started People Data Labs in March 2015. PDL has built an innovative API product for developers and data scientists with over 3 billion B2B data records. Sean has raised from a number of prominent VCs, including 8VC, Founders Fund, and most recently a Series B from Craft Ventures. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for having me.
So let's start with undergrad at Oregon. When did you know that you wanted to pursue an entrepreneurial route versus finishing your bachelor's degree?
Probably right away. I was never one to even show up to class, show up to the tests, do my homework. It certainly wasn't for a lack of learning or wanting to learn, but I just couldn't bring myself to, maybe it's just follow instruction. Maybe that's what I'm bad at. I knew I wanted to go and be an entrepreneurship major. And so I figured no one was going to hire me to do that. And so I figured I might as well just get started. Started spending tuition money. Instead of textbooks, I'd spend it on startup expenses, AWS, and other costs for my first. At that point, it wasn't really a company, but it was a website. I would literally go around the dorm, recruiting my friends to help me out on this website. And then it eventually became my first company. I was able to raise a little bit of money and drop out.
What advice would you give to undergrad students today who are looking to start a company and drop out?
I would just say to go do it. You're at the point in your life where you really you're probably single, you're probably have no kids, you have really no expenses. You should just go do it. Too many people that try to business plan or they try to overanalyze, they could do this or this or this. They try to overplan. Really all you need to do is have a product and go get someone to pay for it. And for the second part, getting someone to pay for it, you can gamify that. Just who would your customer be? If Laura is my customer, I think I can provide a product that provides her some type of value. You should just go talk to her and figure out what the problems she faces from a day-to-day basis and will she pay for, and then build exactly that.
And how many other Lauras are out there as well?
That's right. If you think the problems that Laura is facing are representative of a market, just go build it. I also think that, and I say this, I advise friends or different students from University of Oregon will reach out to me where I went. And sometimes they always say, well, is my market big enough? And any market can be big enough. Maybe there's not enough Lauras today, but if you just sell to, maybe there's 100 Lauras, but you could sell to all 100, then you can figure out a product that all of the Wills want. And now you're onto something. So I would just say to go do it. So that's my bias. That's all I know.
When you were doing it the first time, can you touch on Hallspot and the problem you were solving?
Yeah. So at the time I was 19 years old and a sophomore undergrad. And so my whole world was the university ecosystem. This was 2012. So I essentially wanted a product. There was Facebook and there was Snapchat, but these were products that like my high school friends and my friends from everywhere. And I wanted a social network that was just specific to my university. Kind of like what Facebook originally was. That's the problem I was facing. And so that's what me and a recruited buddies from my dorm, we initially built. And then a good idea on the surface, tough to execute, tough to get college students to download a social app. And then our business model was to go around and get small businesses like local restaurants and bars to send out deals through our app. So that was also a tough execution play. But what I certainly wouldn't change is that we just went for it, had the idea, and there was no time sitting around really just planning. We just went for it.
Social platforms are definitely a tough space. think you see now they're still popping up, and our attention span can just not handle 10 different social platforms. And I'm curious, was there a specific moment when you realized that it wasn't going to work out?
We had succeeded at getting almost 50% of the University of Oregon student body to download our app at different points. The adoption was just incredibly low. So it was a wake up moment of you have to build something that people want. Our product, it certainly wasn't good enough. And that was also a valuable teaching moment because all my friends thought I was so cool that they knew this app was coming. And then we released the V1 app in front of all of your friends. And they say, basically, this sucks. It wasn't a good moment, but in hindsight, that was a good moment because at a young age, I started to realize, okay, it doesn't actually matter that they all think this. They're still my friends. And that's the other thing I'd tell to your question earlier. If someone's thinking of starting a business, it really doesn't matter what anyone thinks of you. The credit goes to the person who's actually trying to do that. I actually have that quote in my bathroom. It's the man in the arena quote.
Failings are really important. Even when we look at founders nowadays, we're looking for repeat founders, people that have failed, come back to build something super innovative or unique. And so you then come to PDL. What was the original People Data Lab solution? And then what is it today?
At my first company in college, behind our backend, we were basically a data company. Social network is basically a data company. I got exposed to just all the user data we were collecting and the data from the small businesses that were our customers, and then teamed up with a different friend from college. His name's Henry, who's my co-founder here at PDL. We wanted to do something with data. We had a lot of conviction that really every business was going to become a data business over the next several decades, which a trend I think we're still young in. So initially, we actually prototyped 3 or 4 products within a month. And the first 3, no one purchased. We shut them down or we'd quickly iterate them. Ultimately, we built a web app for recruiters. It's a simple sourcing platform. So like basically recruiters need to hire relevant candidates for the job they're currently looking for. So we built a data set initially of software engineers. We just got public data. So it's a simple data set and the recruiters could use our website to find candidates for their roles. So simple product, powerful product though, good, accurate data, clean, simple search. Quickly got that product to like 25K MRR. Forget exactly how long that took, maybe 5 or 6 months in. And so that's going well.
What is the new problem you're solving for? It would be great if you could touch high level of like the overview of PDL.
Founder product fit is important, or founder market fit, or in other words, that if you're starting a company, you should probably be passionate about what you're solving because you're probably going to be doing this for a very long time. At the end of the day, perseverance wins out. There's very few companies that just go like this, probably, in fact, zero. Even the ones that the media reports that go like this, that probably isn't what the founder would say. Basically, we weren't passionate about the recruiting product. We're not passionate about working with recruiters and sitting all day. And we love recruiters, but they'd complain if one profile was out of date or something and just wasn't for us. So fortunately, we actually had other HR tech companies, other recruiting platforms started to reach out to us and they said, hey, we're kind of competitive with you, but your data is really good. So do you have an API that actually is a company called Workable? They're an ATS system and they're still our customer today. They said, hey, we could pay you a low 6-figure amount if you just gave us an API. And so my co-founder and I looked at each other and said, hell yeah, and signed the order form. I made up some excuse to the customer as to why sending their API key would take, I think we set like a net 60 on that, but we got it signed and then we scrambled to basically rebuild our data set and rebuild an API, got it to them. And all of a sudden, instead of having recruiter customers who would pay us $100 per month and there'd be high churn, now we were in like an annual deal for a low 6-figure amount. And I didn't really even negotiate that one. We just sort of said yes to the amount they said. So now this was a much better market. Quickly after, we got many other customers. And the problem we solve is that really every company is using data in some way. In this case, Workable is building a recruiting and it's fueled by data, candidate data. There's really infinite use cases as to why a company would want to use data. And so we exist for anyone who's programmatically building something with information on people or companies. So we provide them the data that they need to build their products, to build their use cases. Today, our customers range from vertical SaaS applications, so like recruiting, sales, marketing, insurance platforms. So we sell to these are tech companies who are building those solutions. We sell to them. We're white labeled behind the scenes, so that they'll build their product and ultimately provide that product to some type of end user. So we don't work with the end user. And then we also have an enterprise customer base. Companies like the Amazon HR department uses our data. They have developers within their HR team to just understand their employee base. How good is our talent? Or AI is the new trend. Do we have enough talent there?
And I think that's a great transition into understanding your ICP, or ideal customer profile, and how that's changed. You've given an intro to it, but given your main product is an API product, obviously you leverage more of a partnership approach to sales. You said you're not typically producing something for the end user, but rather it's a input into another piece of software and offering. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about who your target customer looks like.
And it's changed. It always changes. Doing the companies that things always change, and you kind of just have to roll with it. It goes back to the perseverance. Is the best plan is good for about 2 minutes, and then you get punched in the mouth, and then you have a new plan. For us, the way we think about our ICP is just for scale. We're a mid 8-figure ARR scale, mostly like 1 year, 2 multi-year deals. So we've gotten largely to this point by selling to developers, product people, data scientists, anyone who can programmatically use our data to build something. And it's actually a pretty high bar to qualify to be our customer today. You have to have a sufficient business purpose to want to build something here. Whether it's you want to enrich your customer database, you want to build a product, new business model. We power various like anti-fraud models, but there has to be a compelling business case, and then you really have to build towards that. Over time, the past year, we've partnered with companies like Snowflake and the AWS data marketplace, among others, really to ease the delivery mechanism, basically lower the technical bar for us to send you data.
And I'd love to touch a little bit more on data acquisition, and also just an understanding of where you feel People Data Labs provides differentiation among competitors. I know you leverage partnerships and co-ops to provide some proprietary data streams. Give the audience a feel for what type of data People Data Labs is typically providing for customers, and then maybe an example of how a partnership works and how data is actually acquired.
We have information on people and we have information on companies. And our North Star is that we don't want to collect sensitive data. We don't have sensitive data. We have on people, we have largely what's on your business card and then what's on your resume. And nothing on there is sensitive. Maybe someone could say this, but it's your email, it's your phone number, it's like where you've worked. Data like healthcare data, financial data, location data, none of that is anything we'll ever touch. And then on the company, the company is a company, so there's no privacy. But our company data, it's generally high level information on the company. So how many employees, the company's website, the company's location, funding, and other fields. We're getting our data largely from 3 main sources. So we've set up a co-op. So a lot of our customers are providing us with access to some of their data. Nothing overly sensitive as well, but it's all about like valuable linkages, multiple pieces of data tied together that we can then piece together. We buy data. So we have a lot of data partners there. And then we get public data, just information that's available to anyone in the world that's public.
I'd love to hear just a little bit on how you feel that differentiates compared to other potential data sources.
Well, I'd say for one, we just have a very large volume of sources. It makes us like we are the compiler of the data. There's a lot of companies in the data industry that are sort of repackaging other people's data, whereas we are collecting all these minute sources and really compiling it. So it also means that we get to work with all those sources is important from like an accuracy and a compliance standpoint. So it's really easy for us to remove a source if it's no longer compliant, or if someone opts out, we can get exactly to the root source where we originally obtained their information from. It's an accuracy and it's a compliance advantage. We have a very complicated data pipeline that we've built completely in-house. Something we say may be true could be backed up by maybe 51 sources that are all verifying the same amount of that this is true. For example, like where you currently work, we could have 51 sources all saying that. We can provide that to certain customers. And then the compliance, the fact that we have all these sources There's a lot of businesses that are just scraper or get repackaging. So it gives us a big leg up in the enterprise. To my knowledge, we've never failed an enterprise procurement, and they they grill you in data.
How do you choose between optimizing for the breadth of data versus the quality of data? I think especially because data can go stale quickly, especially related probably more towards the people side of things versus the company.
Well, we look at what our customers are. What do our customers need? Some of the use cases are incredibly simple. They just want to have it at all times, an up to date view on where someone works. So for them, they don't care about breadth at all. They just care about just a couple data fields for those customers. But on the other hand, there's customers where we are like their entire data set, and we're powering some type of model that they're building. Power a lot of AI companies, which is not like a new trend. Like we've been powering AI companies for a while. So in some cases, we're their entire data set. In those cases, they care about breadth. They might always be requesting new data fields. It's always a balance. I think for us, we trend on the side of accuracy above just adding every field under the sun. We have very high retention metrics, in large part because our customers know we do prioritize accuracy. It's a hard industry. We're focused on being reliable for the same fields.
And how do you measure accuracy? Just out of curiosity. It's got to be tough.
It's a never ending rabbit hole. Accuracy, it's subjective. It's whatever the customer thinks. When we were selling to recruiters initially, you could provide them 100 candidate profiles, and if a single email address bounced, that was too much. For us now selling to technical people who have a greater understanding of data and that there will be issues, we have a number of sources which we believe to be basically always accurate, and that we will compare to those. At times, we will run a manual QA even on like a very small number of records to hand check it.
Well, I was reading your reviews online and you got pretty good reviews in terms of data, quality, accuracy, price, which I think is impressive because you touched on earlier that the space is really hard to find success in. I mean, being an early stage investor, I see a lot of companies that are still struggling to take off, especially just the whole data packaging and then presenting it in an easy to use format. So I'm curious, when you were raising funding from prominent investors, as we mentioned earlier in the show, what were you looking for? What were they looking for? And was there this taboo around data packaging type companies?
I'd love to hear that you see lots of early stage companies that are in data, because I always view that almost all of them can be our customers. That was also the case when we were starting to fundraise. We've always focused on only one thing, which is the data and providing it to a technical customer. We actually had a lot of VCs who passed on us because they said, well, the data will never be enough. You have to build web applications on top of the data. And we always pushed back and would say, everyone else will build the web applications. They will all need the data, including every enterprise. So eventually we've just met, founders funded our Series A, and met a guy there who basically believed that. And then he wrote a check pretty quickly. And then similar for the Series B. So I would just say to not do too much, and it's a much harder fundraising climate now. I'm not early stage. Would you guys agree with that? Like, is early stage hard right now?
The bar is really high, at least the Series A and B, because a lot of funds who are at early stage growth equity, the funds are more curated, meaning there's just 15 to 18 companies per fund compared to the seed or pre-seed where you're making one or two investments a month. The bar is higher for that level of quality. That's probably been the case for the last 12 months, to be honest with you.
The growth stage things are also drying up. Typically, growth capital is going towards expanding the customer base and growing the business, which is just tough in the current macro where in certain divisions within enterprises, people are looking to cut budgets. So I think for that reason, you're also seeing some slowdown within the growth space.
Or a founder party the other day, and EBITDA is like never a word that you would have ever heard at a founder party in San Francisco until like this year.
All of a sudden, cash flow matters. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I'd say for the Series B, I had known Jeff Fleur from Kraft for probably 6 months. We were introduced from a mutual friend, and probably at all times there's a set number of future financiers or partners who I'm curating, getting on a texting basis with, and just casually going to a happy hour with, and never asking for anything. And ideally, even they are wanting to come in. but we're not asking for that yet. A lot of founders do that, but I think also it's something that a lot don't do well. That would be a thing. And I know a lot of audience, young, like fresh out of, so like if you were like a young, well, the first time I was fundraising, I talked about Founders Fund who did our A. I guess I could talk about our seed round if that was a complete shit show. We got 50 plus no's just at different points. We didn't know what we wanted to do was probably the biggest issue in hindsight. Like I mentioned, we had built the recruiting app and then, I mean, we didn't shut it down because we had $500,000 of ARR on that. So we wanted to keep those payments coming in. But at the same time, we had this, our data API business had long surpassed that by 3x. And so we didn't have a clear story. What exactly was this business? Is it a recruiting business? Is it a data business? Basically, I think if we had committed all in on the data business sooner, that would have helped.
I want to move on to a very hot topic here and curious to get your take. Obviously, data has become increasingly important. You hear people say data is the new gold, but obviously with the proliferation of large language models, which rely on data sets to learn, it's become increasingly important. So we're curious to hear a little bit more about how you've seen the value of data rise over the past 5 to 10 years and how you guys are hooked up to this trend.
Data is the new oil, or at least that was the version of it. In our first office, we literally had an oil barrel. It's like a 4-foot tall oil barrel. There's no oil actually in it, but that was like right by the door, like when customers would walk in. We certainly agree with that trend. That was basically our viewpoint of why we pivoted the company back in 2016, 2017. I mean, I think the recent AI boom is accelerating that further. We've had, though, customers building AI products for probably 5 years. Maybe they just haven't been as good until recently. The AI is getting better, certainly. But that theme of companies needing data for their AI, I guess the way we view it is companies will always need data to build their products. That they'll need it. It's just the location that they're needing it can change. Initially, it was maybe they need it in S3 or wherever. Now it's like more for their AI. For us, we're tinkering around with ChatGPT ourselves. But again, we're not a company that really works with end users. So the way like you are going into ChatGPT to prompt and whatnot, we have an internal version for our team of like a PDL chatbot to look up people or companies within ChatGPT. But our specialty as a company is not the distribution to get millions of users to use that. But we're in partnership talks with quite a few companies who are also building that, and we're better equipped to power them behind the scenes.
And you mentioned a big part of the business is the consumer data. And I'm sure the potential regulatory changes with the California Consumer Privacy Act is top of mind right now, in addition to just a shifting consumer sentiment on data privacy. You're seeing the increasing adoption of platforms like DuckDuckGo that are promoting privacy first. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the impact of these topics as data as service businesses.
Generally, more privacy is good. From our perspective, it starts with just we don't collect sensitive data. B2B data, again, data that's on your business card and data that's on your resume, it's not subject to the harshest of regulations compared to like a HIPAA or others. There's changes, say mostly logistical changes with CCPA and others to add the opt-out and let people request to see a copy of the data you have on them and where it came from. I think, though, that everyone is not necessarily against their data being used. For example, we also have an acceptable data use policy. So we will only work with legitimate businesses who are using our data for a legitimate purpose. So like in every order form we sign, there's a permitted use case. Enabling a recruiting platform to automate hiring, to match candidates with a relevant job for them. We think that's a good use of data and that people would like their data to be used for that. Or similarly, there's all these ads on YouTube or Hulu or basically these ads where you as the consumer can say, hey, I like this ad or I don't like this ad. And it leads to a better, more personalized experience. I think most consumers don't actually mind that. They realize they're going to see some ads, so they might as well see ads that they like.
Instagram is like a classic example. My generation target audience is the perfect example of getting served an ad and then going to make a purchasing behavior right after.
And I'd almost prefer to see ads of things that I might actually potentially buy.
The flip side of that is almost in Europe, where And this is another reason we only collect B2B data because it's less regulated, even in GDPR. Europe is on the verge of basically even like the sandwich shop can't retain data on who their customers are. They can't send you a text message to say, hey, 50% off your sandwich today that you love. The word privacy is big, bad, word. Everyone wants privacy for your, like no one is saying privacy is a bad thing. It's just, where's the line? And I think for us, we're on the correct side of that line. And actually, perhaps more consumers than people think might actually also agree with that.
Moving on to a topic it's a little less directly related to People Data Labs, but obviously still tangentially related. As you think of the last platform shift into movement towards the cloud, you saw large amounts of value accrue in Amazon and Microsoft and Google and their respective clouds, but even more value in the application layer. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this new transformative kind of platform shift we're seeing into AI and large language models, and where you think the majority of value will accrue. Will it be in kind of the Google, Microsofts of the world, OpenAI, maybe even the Databricks kind of Snowflake storage side of things, the processors, or different kind of application incumbents? Curious to get your thoughts.
Well, we're biased, so I'll start off with saying the data companies will benefit, need more data. And already in the past 6 months, there's been a number of protective initial like shots across the bow, lawsuits between different companies to protect their data sets. We've certainly seen an increase in demand in the volume of application layer companies who are building some type of AI. Most of them are building an AI on top of ChatGPT. We've seen hundreds of these companies come to us. They're all building some type of smart, perhaps vertical specific or use case specific. Maybe it's the ChatGPT for recruiters or the ChatGPT for shopping or something. I thought it was interesting when ChatGPT elected to open their APIs and to partner. I know there's a lot of concern among our customers that ChatGPT was just going to, knock all of their products off themselves. That ChatGPT would build the recruiter vertical and they'd build the, like what Amazon is doing with Amazon Basics. But so far, ChatGPT has created a pretty strong developer ecosystem. I mean, we've certainly seen a lot of these developers coming to us.
One last question for you. And before this conversation, I was reading through a couple customer scripts actually from People Data Lab customers. And obviously, your product is an API product. It's an input into what is typically a larger base data set that's either a platform, then resells the data, obviously. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on if you ever second guessed taking the API route and how that potentially impacts your addressable market, because customers are obviously reselling the data as an additional product.
No second guessing.
Fair answer.
Someone can second guess anything, but it's not really going to do you any good. You just move on. But no, in this, do we regret? No, the API market is massive. I'm sure if you're ZoomInfo, you have a different answer to that. But also, that's a very crowded space.
And it obviously has a different implication on your actual customer as well, and likely retention and cost of acquiring those customers as well. Certainly different. Yeah.
It's fair. Okay, can we go get 500 more ARR selling the API? To that, we don't know. We have time to figure that out. I think similar to if we can sell to all of the Lauras but there's only 10, let's go sell to all of those first. And then we can sell to all the Wills. Maybe there's 20. I talked about how we are expanding the delivery mechanism. So still figuring out the answer to how do we get our next 500 million of ARR? How do we have a path to that? It could just be the APIs themselves. I think one thing people think back to all the seed VCs who basically that was the reason why they said the API route is not big enough. For one, look at all the API companies that exist. There's a reason all these can exist in different markets. Everyone is adopting them. And then two, the volume of potential customers, all you have to do is go look at the recent YC class. We have our teams look at that and half of them could be our customer. So time will tell, but certainly the AI boom has accelerated new company creation who need data. And then also enterprise for us. So starting to penetrate more and more enterprises, very large TAM there. It's also, I never thought I'd say this. I said this like a year ago for the first time, but basically selling into the enterprise can basically be a moat, maybe not a moat in the traditional sense. It's hard for someone to start a new company and immediately do enterprise sales, and they pay a lot.
So to end the episode, we have 2 questions for you. The first one is, what motivates you to work hard?
Building a company is fun, honestly is. Sure, there's parts in the day to day that are not fun, but just get those done. Overall, the net trend is it's fun. Played sports in high school. Building a company is like playing sports to me. It's competition. You want to win. Unlike though, like sports, you can basically hire, you can have as many first round draft picks as you want. You can recruit everyone into your company. It doesn't have to be, our company culture is pretty loose, smart people, work hard and have fun. That keeps me going. I'll probably never retire. If I can just continue to get to build companies, my whole life, that's perfect.
And then what's a piece of advice you'd give your younger self?
To just not care what anyone thinks of you. I think I read it's some quote. It's like, it's basically everyone thinks that everyone is looking at them, but in reality, no one gives a shit about you. Just basically go. If you have an idea, who cares? Just go. And I suppose objectively, that is what I did. Thinking back to my first company and even at the start of PDL, was still a little, not timid, but maybe a little bit too calculated, sometimes you just need to go. Go with your gut, and that will usually work out. And sometimes you're wrong. Just try again.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for taking the time to coming on and chatting with Laura and I. I know we really enjoyed doing some research for the episode, and we enjoy the conversation and look forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Thanks to you both. Fun episode.